Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Woo! We're feeling good on a fantastic Friday. My coffee is pretty much gone. Made a nice little espresso, a little brown sugar shaken espresso. It's like $8 or something at Starbucks. Made it in my Starbucks cup. Did not cost me $8. But welcome in. We are caffeined up and ready to go on a fantastic Friday. So much to get into. Such little time. But is it such little time? Perhaps time is merely an illusion. And maybe we have more time than you've ever thought we did together. Maybe the show will go for 35 minutes, maybe 45, maybe an hour 5, maybe 5 hours. Who knows who's to say? I actually know. I am to say, not 5 hours. We're going to get into a lot today, and I'll play around in the comments section, and I'm going to do a thing that we tried out the other day. We're going to put the running comments section right over here. So if you watch on the stream on YouTube or Facebook or X, you're going to start to see everybody's comments as they pop up. There's Video Guy Amadeo's comment to start. Hold on, there we go. There we go. Right there. So we'll have the live comments going over here. I'll get to as many as I can. We'll highlight some from time to time. I'll have to take down the live comments every once in a while when we go to share something on the screen. But we're going to keep giving it a go. We're going to keep trying to figure out whether or not it's worth doing. Now, lots to get into today. Now, what are we going to get into today, Russ? Well, good question. Thanks for asking. We have a bunch of stuff. Number one, first and foremost, let's start with the basics, okay? There are basic things that we need to make sure that we kind of get out there for the rest of the people. Flyers. There are a bunch of targets. There are names, aplenty. There was a report today about one guy who could be potentially a Flyers target, and if the Flyers are the team that's thinking about giving this guy the salary that I've seen, I am going to probably pull out my hair, and my 5 head is going to become an 8 head by the time the show is over. We'll talk about him. We'll talk about the guy that, for whatever reason, it continues to just be a very big discussion point. And I'm not totally sure why, but it's become a very big discussion point on Flyers Twitter about that one guy in Toronto and the fact that he might be the guy worth considering going after. And by the way, there's a relatively young Russian dude who the Flyers were linked to back in January, who is now a free agent and is going to have to choose between remaining with his team in the KHL or perhaps coming to the NHL. Flyers are among 2 teams that are believed to be on his finalist list right now, along with the Vegas Golden Knights. So we're going to get to all those guys. We'll get to the Flyers targets. At some point in the show, we're also going to talk about whether or not it makes any sense. One of the reported potential trades that's kind of gotten shot down, but it is a fun little thought exercise on a fun Friday, is Paul George being dealt for Kevin Durant, and whether or not that would excite anybody, whether or not that would move the needle in any meaningful way in Philadelphia. Admittedly, seems kind of crazy, and the idea of that also having to send out the number 3 overall pick for Kevin Durant seems a little bit odd. But we'll get there a little bit later on. We'll do a little touch on the Sixers today. But we're going to start not with the surging Phillies. It's a Friday. Phightin Words dropped a new episode earlier today, so I'm deferring to them. I've told you guys, as we're getting towards the summer, eventually we're going to do some more Phillies talk on the show, but Phightin Words, available on the Joy Media YouTube channel, as well as wherever you get your podcasts, and on their YouTube channel. They dropped a whole episode going deep into a 7-game winning streak now for your team, your town, your Philadelphia Phillies. I might start going back to talking about the Phillies next week, but honestly, there are so many other things going on that I find more interesting. It's not that I don't find 7 straight wins interesting, but the Rockies really suck. They're an absolute abomination and an affront to Major League Baseball. So I'm not getting too high and I'm not getting too low. 7 straight wins is very lovely, but I'm not going to go out of my way to make it seem like this is, the most impressive stretch we've ever seen. So we'll come back around to them next week, but if you haven't done so, go subscribe to Phightin Words, and it's part of Joy Media, and it's a great thing. The number 1 Phillies podcast on the network. So I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. It's a worthwhile download, worthwhile subscription on the YouTube. But no, we're going to start off with something that turned a lot of heads. Now, if you remember on Wednesday's show, we were talking about the fact that the Eagles were trying to get the tush push saved, and we broke down the 10 teams that voted in opposition to the cowardly Packers' attempt to ban not just the tush push, but really what was pushing and pulling anywhere on the field. So if you had a runner at midfield who got stopped by a couple of defenders and then an offensive lineman came in and shoved Saquon Barkley, for example, in the back and they picked up 5 yards, that would be banned. Or if a lineman or a tight end pulled the running back forward anywhere on the field, that would be banned. That got shut down. And so we talked about the 10 teams, and it's really funny. I do want to have a very brief aside here. I always get a kick out of how short-form content plays, right? Because I know the people that typically check out this show on YouTube, Facebook, and X. I have a general idea of those people, at least when it comes to like Instagram, or if they go and check out the YouTube shorts and comment. But TikTok is this like wild, wild place. Now, we all know TikTok's kind of crazy, but like there was a clip going around from Wednesday's show where I was saying about how like, yeah, it's interesting that some teams kind of backtracked, or at least their coaches, what their coaches said isn't how their owners voted. And I said about, Steichen, and I said about Gannon and Todd Bowles. And I also noted 14 seconds into the clip that the owners were the ones who voted, and maybe that's why it didn't go in line with what the coaches had said. And the amount of people on TikTok were like,
you realize that it was the owners who voted on the tush-push ban, right? You realize that it wasn't the coaches themselves, jackass.
And so then I had to do the annoying thing, which is point out the timestamp to them. 14 seconds in the clip, I said the owners voted on it. This is how I lose my mind. And again, the 5-head could become an 8-head if we're not too careful out there. Video guy Amadeo does say, though, they can blame me. Yes, and they probably should, Amadeo. In fairness, they probably should blame you for that. How dare you put a hook in the video that doesn't clearly articulate that until the 14-second mark and then get me into it angrily with people on TikTok. Anyway, no, I want to start with a place that Jeffrey Lurie had to go, apparently, in order to get the tush-push ban shot down. It took a lot. It took a lot. And it took Jeffrey Lurie going to a place I don't think anybody ever thought he would. It took going to a place that I don't think anybody ever wanted to find out Jeffrey Lurie went to. I don't think it's a place that I ever want to think about Jeffrey Lurie talking about. Jeffrey Lurie happened to compare, well, I'm going to pull the quote here because it is almost insane how it went. But it was reported that Jeffrey Lurie, who took Jason Kelce into the wider meeting before it went to the owners, eventually Lurie gave a very passionate speech. They were saying there were reports that Jeffrey Lurie spoke for an hour defending the tush push. And at some point, the 49ers owner Jed York reportedly said, how much more shit do you need to say? Like apparently after an hour, Jed York is like, I'm done. What else do you need to say? How much more shit do you need to say? And I got to tell you, Jeffrey Lurie should have said as much as I want. Now, Jeffrey Lurie did kind of say that in his closing comments, but I got to tell you, his comment was a hell of a thing. We're going to throw over to the comment here first because it blew my mind. Jeffrey Lurie's always kind of seemed like a somewhat reserved, quiet guy to me. But Lurie talked about the tush push, and he talked about the banning of the tush push and why it seemed ridiculous. So here you go. Jeffrey Lurie, I have to take the comment thing down. There we go. So this is reported by a bunch of people. Toward the end of a speech that lasted close to an hour, Lurie made an analogy, telling the room that regardless of whether the play was banned, it was a win-win for the Eagles. Adding that, and I'm going to add a little context here, creating a play that other teams would try to ban from the league was, quote, like a wet dream for a teenage boy. Just let that one sink in. Actually, maybe don't let it sink in. Jeffrey Lurie told the assembled owners in the room and in front of Roger Goodell that banning a play, that like creating a play that's so successful that other team owners would want to ban it is like a wet dream for a teenage boy. Now, I was a teenage boy. A bunch of people in the comments right now were teenage boys. I have to tell you, I don't need to know if anybody ever had a wet dream about creating a play that other NFL owners would ban. I could tell you from personal experience, I did not have any kind of experience, dream of any variety of creating a play that NFL owners would ban. But maybe that's what makes Jeffrey Lurie so different. But apparently this was offensive because Troy Vincent, of all people, Troy Vincent, who, by the way, played for this team during a pretty important era in Philadelphia Eagles football, he got a little bit upset. Troy Vincent chastised him reportedly for the wet dream comment. Should we call it the wet dream comment? Saying it for saying it in front of women. Because I don't know if you know this or not. Women have never heard what a wet dream is. They have no idea. Ladies have no idea.
Oh, honey, I heard this.
That actually sounds condescending to women. All right, let's see. Can I do a lady voice that isn't going to get me in trouble? Hey, honey. Nope, that's not it. Anyway, am I to believe that a lady who heard this in the meeting went out, found any guy, could be a husband, could be a boyfriend, could be a friend, could be one of the other owners, and said, hey, what is a wet dream? What does that mean? Does that mean that you sleepwalked and fell into the pool? Does that mean that you fell into the bathtub? Does that mean you doused yourself in the shower? Is that when you get really drunk and you end up in the bathtub and your friend turns on the shower head to wake you up? Is that what I don't think that there's a lady in attendance that's like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe Jeffrey Lurie. The crude humor, the audacity of this man to say that creating a play that other owners want to ban is called that is like a wet dream. I can't believe he would say that. I am offended. Clutching my pearls. I don't have pearls, but I bet an owner does. You mean to tell me I'm supposed to believe that there was a woman in the room who was offended? Yo, it's 2025. There are so many worse things that it could have been compared to. We're really going to get upset about a term that's used when talking about puberty to fourth graders? Because I can tell you, as a parent of a fourth grader, that's apparently in the video. I remember that being in fifth grade, not fourth grade, but apparently it's fourth grade now. You know, this economy. So I'm to believe that a grown-ass woman was really upset about something from like a puberty video, right? Like the term wet dream. Okay, sure. So Troy Vincent, who took money from the Eagles, played for the Eagles, chastised his former owner. Oh, that's great. And then, this is what we go from there. Lurie spoke for several more minutes, adding whoever voted to ban the play would be taking liability for putting quarterbacks at risk. So we knew that it was going to get kind of contentious. We knew that there was going to be a big argument about it. But man, like when this all was said and done, and like when the final vote tally came out, and then hours later we found out about the wet dream comment from Jeffrey Lurie, I cackled. But like the initial reporting of it was weird and like didn't give the full quote. And like, so here you go. Like AJ over in the chat says there's got to be a better analogy than that. I don't disagree with him. But like when I first saw the comment, I was like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know what we're getting at there. But then I saw, okay, creating a play like that is, okay, fine. Now, one of the people who helped Jeffrey Lurie make the compelling case was Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce, of course, we expect to kind of weigh in. We played the clip from the other day of him saying that he was going to go to the owners' meeting because he felt like his the reasoning for retiring was misrepresented by some people. And Kelce went on WIP this morning to talk about saving the tush push. Now, mind you, we're going to go from the tush push, we're going to go back to the Flyers, we're going to go to the Sixers. So I know we're kind of relitigating something from a day or two ago, but I do think that it's kind of important. So let's hear what Jason Kelce had to say. Again, this was Kelce on the WIP morning show on Friday the 23rd. And this is him just kind of weighing in on what it was that he did, what role he played in getting the tush push saved by 10 teams, including your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go out to Jason Kelce.
Impassioned was Jeffrey's speech, his remarks. How strong did he go?
He went very strong, stronger than and we talked about, the day we kind of met for breakfast and kind of had a plan of what we were going to do and an order of how we're going to say things. And he was even more impassioned in the room. And I think that.
So let's just unpack that for a second. Can we do that really quickly? Let's treat this like Christmas morning. We're unpacking it. Okay. So Jeffrey Lurie, who again, as I mentioned, very mild-mannered guy. Jason Kelce, we remember dressing as a mummer. Jason Kelce, very loud guy, brash guy. We're used to that. They sat down for breakfast before going into the meeting. And I have to imagine Jeffrey Lurie, like, to some extent, is like, Jason, it's really important that we get the point across, and that, if you can speak to the lack of player safety issues with the play, and that would be really helpful to kind of fortify our argument here, and maybe dispel some of the notions. And then I have to imagine that, like, 2 hours later, you've got Jeffrey Lurie in front of the owners for an hour, having Jed York ask, how much more shit do you need to say? And then him creating the play to a wet dream. All right, let's continue.
You try not to take a lot of this stuff like it's an attack on you and personal and things, but I think that the reality is, a lot of this proposal was there because of the tush push and because of the success that the Philadelphia Eagles had. And I think that it feels a little bit like it's an attack on your organization and what you guys are doing well. And I don't.
That's fair. And by the way, we noted the context here that the actual ban itself, while mostly targeted at the tush push, also included any kind of pushing or pulling of players in a group anywhere on the field. So the tush push is the most notable version of this. But again, it could have been, guys coming in the midst of a scrum at midfield, kind of pushing to get the runner over the, to get the first down, getting that extra 6 inches to get the first down. But that is a good point. And the fact that the tush push is the play that has essentially been cited, and it's the one that has gotten the most notoriety, and the fact that the Eagles are coming off a Super Bowl and 2 Super Bowl appearances in 3 years, like, it stands to reason that as the owner of the team, you do feel like, I've done a lot of, if you're Jeffrey Lurie, you're like, I've done a lot of good community work, done a lot of good charity work, have kind of invested in this team, built one of the preeminent franchises in the entire NFL, one of the highest rated teams in the NFL. In many ways, living up to that gold standard line from like a decade ago. You've done that. And now you have a bunch of schmucks who are trying to go after you for this play that they can't stop, but they all have the ability to run. They all have the option to run the play, but they're not. Okay. I get why you take it personally. We'll continue.
I don't think that that's necessarily the meaning behind it, but certainly I think Jeffrey voiced some opinions and was very passionate about everything, and definitely he made his point well known for sure.
What would you say, Jason, was his main argument? I know in a 1-hour speech, it's probably hard to boil it down to one main thing, but what was the central theme you would say he circled back to the most as his main argument?
That's the important thing, because if you're talking for an hour, you have to be really careful. I know. We typically talk for an hour, me, you, and the dance floor for 3 times a week for an hour on this show, sometimes longer. You have to be careful. Sometimes, if you ramble a little bit, people get a little bit angry. Jed York got angry.
I don't want to go too much into what was said, but I think
Understood.
Jeffrey's main thing was really to talk about the safety issues of the play, and one of the reasons that he thinks that's not a concern with this play in particular, and why it might be more safe than potentially other plays. And I think that was probably the main thing directly associated with the play itself.
And that is the point. Like, that, I think, is where the tush push people actually hurt themselves. The tush push ban people. They hurt themselves the second they started talking about player safety, because there were no data to support the notion that the tush push is a dangerous play. Nothing. It was all hypotheticals. It was all hypotheticals about torquing of the neck, but none of it has happened to this point. And again, if you're thinking about, sure, and we talked about this months ago on the show, position of the offensive lineman as they're going low to try to set the line, to try to get a space for the quarterback to be able to get through, the running back to be able to come and push and get leverage, right? When you look at that, yes, in theory, it is complicated. And yes, in theory, it could put the lineman in jeopardy. Torquing of the neck, compression of the neck, in theory, yes. It has not happened yet. What we do know is if you ran a regular quarterback sneak, you're going to have a higher impact on the quarterback. And what we also know is if Jalen Hurts turns around, hands the ball to Saquon Barkley, you can bet your ass there's going to be a legitimate collision between Saquon Barkley, maybe his line, maybe the defensive line, maybe a linebacker coming over the top, maybe a cornerback or a safety blitzing off the outside. There's going to be contact. One could argue to some extent that at least when it comes to collisions, the tush push is the safest play. The second they tried to make that the crux of the argument, and there were no data to support it, guess what? To me, the whole thing went out the window. You could have tried to make that argument, but it ain't happening. Okay, so that was the tush push. That was Jeffrey Lurie's wonderful little line. And it is pretty interesting. I'm going to go over to the comments here really quick. Then we're going to get into the Flyers targets, and we'll get to the Paul George, Kevin Durant of it all here on a Fantastic Friday. And if there's anything else you want to get to at some point on the show today, just drop it over in the comments, and we'll get to as many as we can. And you can see over here, down in the low area. I got to figure out. There we go. Go forward. Right here. You can see right next to Bucky, you can see the live comments coming in over on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, you can certainly comment. Your comments will pop up there as well. And if you're on X, you have to click on the video first and then put your little comment in the old Periscope mode, and then that will pop up on the show as well. All right, let's go over to the comments, and then we're going to wander on off to talking about your team, your town, the Philadelphia Flyers, who somehow continue to make some headlines, even though they haven't been playing for about a month. Seth Pamilia over on YouTube says, good afternoon, Mr. Joy. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Happy Memorial Day weekend to you and yours. It is one of those weekends that we all just kind of get to sit back, and we are grateful, and we remember people, and we celebrate, and we have a nice little picnic, some cookouts, some barbecuing is going to be happening. I'm cracking out the big green egg this weekend. Might smoke some wings, might smoke some ribs. I don't know. My wife is going to a concert this weekend. You know, I got to go. I was down in Florida last week. I had a lot of fun. My wife said to me the other day, she was like, there's a concert going on this weekend. I'm not going to tell you which one. But she was like, there's a concert going on this weekend. I was thinking about getting tickets. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, well, yeah, sure. And I thought she was going to be like, do you want to go? And I was going to be like, oh, if it makes you happy, like, I'll go. And then she said, I got tickets. And I said, well, that's great. And then she said, I'm going with my coworker, which is awesome. And then I realized she didn't mean to do this. But then that means that my night that night can now be a video game night. Because once those kids go to bed, Daddy's playing some video games. So she gets to go enjoy the concert. I get to play some video games. It's not a bad weekend. Not at all. I hope everybody does have a really nice Memorial Day weekend. I know that, well, maybe we'll talk about it later on in the show. But, you know, it's one of those, it's a weekend and a holiday that I feel very conflicted about. Not the holiday itself. The reason for Memorial Day is legitimate. And I've told you guys before, this one always hits close to home because my cousin was tragically, passed in service in Afghanistan. And so it's always a very somber holiday, and it's one that we absolutely should celebrate. And at the same time, it's almost gotten people like to have their celebrations. And it's like, well, let's also remember why we have the holiday in the first place. I think a lot of times we kind of forget that. Make sure that you at least go through with the idea of why we celebrate the holiday in the first place. And if you want to get wasted on Sunday or whatever, and you want to, flip some burgers, have some margs, have some sangria, good on you. But maybe on Monday, you just take a real brief moment to be grateful to those who, pay the ultimate sacrifice. Let's see. Video guy Amadeo over on YouTube says the IIHF has to stop banning Russia from the Olympics, preventing Matvey from playing on the international stage. I agree. 100%. Anthony DeGrazio, I think he's calling me the Italian stallion himself. I'm going to say it was me. But maybe he's talking about himself. AJ's here, says, happy Friday, Russ. Got to have lunch with the wife today. Enjoy that lunch. I hope it's a good one. Let's see. I see some Flyers comments over here, so we're going to go there in a second. JH is very happy. Got the notification. I've now figured it out, JH. I think I have to put the show up 15 minutes or longer, bigger gap, for the notification to populate. I've tried 10 minutes before, and I've been told that the notification doesn't populate. So I think it's 15 minutes. I have to set it to go live 15 minutes from when the stream gets set up for the notification, but I'm glad it came through. JH also likes the chat down here in the corner. Hey, right over here. I don't know if anybody can actually read it, and I also don't, I haven't even screwed around with this to see if there's a way to, change it. I don't even know if there is a way to change anything that has to do with the chat in the bottom corner. I don't think I can move the chat. They're in beta mode on testing this thing. So they said, hey, Russ, what do you think about trying this live chat? And I said, hey, you know what? I think it's a great idea. Let's do it. If you remember back in the old Press Row Show days, we used to use a thing called Restream. I used to use OBS, and I used to have the restream chat in the side. And so it was the same idea, but it was the entire side of the screen, and it would make my old laptop like want to light itself on fire. So I'm glad that this is a much better looking option. We'll see if it works. Let's see. Tony Louie talking about Jeffrey Lurie also says, I know what the Flyers didn't take Lashenko over Zeev. Yeah, well, you know. Mike Swithers is here. Hi, Mike. How are you doing? Is that Jack Daniels logo there in the profile picture? You know what? When's the last time I had Jack Daniels? It's been a long time. Very, very long time. Cryptic Cowboy with a very interesting comment and question here. What's actually the best strategy for surviving a zombie apocalypse? First of all, don't look at me. I will be one of the first ones dead in a zombie apocalypse. I am not particularly big. I'm a little bit stronger now than I used to be, but I am certainly not going to survive the zombie apocalypse. I will be in a corner waiting for them to rip me apart. So I don't know. Pretty much do the opposite of whatever I do, unless zombies laugh. And for some reason, they find something I do or say funny, in which case I will continue doing that until they inevitably rip me to shreds. I don't know. What is the best strategy? I would assume maybe go to the top of a mountain. You obviously need to have probably some fuego. Do you jerry-rig a flamethrower? Maybe that would work. You need food. You need a sustainable, accessible water source. I don't know how you're going to do that. Probably a well. You pretty much want to have a compound at the top of a mountain. I don't know if an underground bunker really helps. I know that some people are like very big on the underground apocalypse bunkers, but I don't know. I feel like you need a little bit of vitamin D from the sun. If you're underground, you're just going to be sad. You're going to be holed up with your family, like way too close together, and you're going to have like MREs and a bunch of kind of meals that aren't really good anyway, and everybody's going to whine and complain, and there's no running water, and you're like pooping in a bucket. I'd at least like to be able to see the sun, I think. Okay. So I don't know if that's going to help us survive, but I think we would be happier. Let's see. Raymond Supper says, Jalen Hurts is the only quarterback who can run the play. When he retires, it's done. I think that you're going to see some teams really work on the tush push now that it's allowed for another year. I would not be surprised if you see an uptick in the number of teams who run it. Now, how effectively they run it, I don't know. And I also don't think you're going to see a lot of teams run it aside from the goal line. Like, I don't think you're going to see that influx happen around like the 50-yard line to try to pick up a 4th and 1 and, with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Like, I don't think the teams are going to want to experiment with it there. But I could see it on goal line plays, probably like 1st and 2nd down. And then you're going to kind of revert back to your traditional goal line offense, is my guess. But like, if you're an NFL team, like, just study what the Eagles do. I mean, I know that it comes down to the personnel and the execution, but like, somebody else should be able to run it. The real question is whether or not Sean McDermott's going to run it with Buffalo. By the way, that was a TikTok comment that I saw.
You realize that Sean McDermott's not the guy who calls the plays for Buffalo, right?
Yeah, well, guess what, dumbass? If the point, and if my overarching point here has been Sean McDermott is a total hypocrite because he says, player safety, and then they run it the second most times in the league. If he's really afraid of his quarterback getting hurt, he's going to tell the offensive coordinator, don't call the play. Pretty simple. Let's see. Anthony DeGrazio says, we drove home from Disney last Friday. Good God. Bucky was in costume, and my girls got a picture with him. I asked if it was better than meeting Cinderella. They were not amused at my comment. They weren't amused because, of course, the answer is yes. Meeting Bucky is significantly better than meeting Cinderella. So when I was in Fort Lauderdale, I actually did flirt with the idea of, do I rent a car and drive 3 hours north? I forget what town it was. But do I drive 3 hours north to the closest Buc-ee's? I thought about it. I ultimately didn't do it. I'm glad that I didn't, because that would have just been a long drive and an expensive rental for no reason other than to go to a Buc-ee's, which, now that I'm saying it out loud, does feel kind of pathetic. But that's okay. I mentioned the video games earlier. I'll probably play FIFA this weekend.
EAFC 25.
I'll probably play that. Will I play any Call of Duty? Unlikely. I'm still waiting for Halo to get announced for PS5. I think it's going to happen. Gears of War got announced. Forza got announced. It's time for some Halo on PS5. I did warn my wife that if and when Halo lands on PS5, whatever version of Halo, she won't have a husband for like a few nights because I will be locked in on Halo. I miss playing Halo. Chris Reed says, Ant recommended the Black Friday Flyers game be played at midnight on Black Friday. Are you down with that? Hell yeah. I would love that. A midnight Black Friday game? Absolutely. It would be ridiculous, stupid. The crowd would be weird. I'm here for it. JH. Call of Duty lobby, clowning on some middle schoolers. So when I was in high school, I would do like a little kid voice back in the Xbox days. And I'd be like,
You just got pwned by an 8-year-old.
I used to drive people nuts. If you played Halo 2 out there, you might remember, not Zanzibar. What was the level? It was like red and clay, and it wasn't Lockout. Halo 2, it was a map that was like desert-ish, and there was a base, and you had to come in through the windows or up through the cave or under the little bridge. I don't remember what the level was called. But I used to like camp underneath the little bridge. I'd find a little spot, and when you were playing like capture the flag or whatever, I'd sit there on the outside, and I would do, without pressing the black button. Black button was for your private chat, or maybe it was white. I would just sit outside, and I wouldn't hit the button, and then I would hear the other team, and I would just start singing, and this little kid, we're gonna pwn the noobs today. I used to drive people nuts. Won a lot of games in Halo 2. I will bring that voice back if Halo goes to PS5. Also, sorry for JH. I apparently killed JH. I didn't mean to do that. I really didn't. Let's see. AJ says it's a good weekend to break out the old school GoldenEye 64 and make your older two cry. I don't think I have GoldenEye. I liked playing GoldenEye way back when, but I don't think I have GoldenEye, which is a problem, I guess. Chris Freed over on YouTube says the Big Bad Wolf roller coaster is returning to Busch Garden, Williamsburg. Did you ever ride the original one? I think I did. Yes. I remember going to Williamsburg once, and it was really, really ridiculously hot, and I don't think we ever went back. All right, now I see some other stuff here about the Flyers. We're going to get there in a second. Let's see. Video Guy Amadeo, by the way, won a signed Mishkov jersey the other day. I think the Flyers were doing a season ticket holder giveaway thing. He won a Mishkov jersey. How about that? Mike Swither says, when Philly plays Tampa, the tush push will be real interesting. Well, yeah, for sure. Raymond Sepper says, Broads versus Morgani debate this afternoon. Did the Flyers hit a home run hiring Tocchet? Can you define home run where the yellow line is? I mean, it's not a home run hire. It's a good hire, potentially. I don't know if it's a great one, but it's an okay one. D.D. Skinner says, Arizona is getting the first Buc-ee's near Phoenix, I think. They are. When I was out in Vegas last fall, there was a whole big thing about it. And I think I'm supposed to go to Vegas in the fall again for a conference, and like I might be convinced to like rent a car and go right over the border to that Arizona Buc-ee's. I might. Okay. I think that's it for now, and then I'm going to go back to, all right, let's get into the Flyer stuff, because there have been multiple names bandied about. There are already people in the comments here on YouTube especially. There are multiple names that the Flyers are connected to. I want to get to one that actually does feel real. I want to get to one that I think is likely going to amount to something. I don't know what yet. I don't know how likely it is yet, but I am going to give a shout out to my co-host over on Snow the Goalie, Anthony Sanfilippo, who was on this a good while ago and did a nice, thorough write-up over on Pattison. But he was talking to me about it the other day, and he's like, you wouldn't believe what name the Flyers are linked to. And I said, what? He goes, it's a Russian guy. And I said, is it Maxim Shabanov? And he's like, how did you know? And I said, well, because they were rumored to be in conversations about him a few months ago. So anyway, Shabanov, he's 24 years old. He plays for Yaroslavl Lokomotiv, and he's a really solid player, 24 years old. He is a finalist for the regular season MVP award, the Golden Stick. Don't expect me to give you a scouting report on Artyom Galimov. Not doing that. I've never heard of the guy until I saw this graphic yesterday. But he's a finalist for the league MVP of the KHL, and I know that some people are like very hesitant about the KHL, and you know, is that going to translate well to the NHL? The real concern with Shabanov is that he's 5'8" and he's 160 pounds. By comparison, I am a little bit shorter, and I'm a little bit heavier than Shabanov. And now, would I say I would be a great NHL prospect? No, because I can't really play hockey anyway, but also because I'm a small guy. And an 82-game season with this travel, you're going to wither away. It happens every year. We watch big players in this league wither away by the time the playoffs come around. So if you're only 5'8" and 160 pounds, and you're playing every night, chances are it's going to be very complicated. Now, let me see. Can I do this without causing a problem? Here we go. This is just to give you an idea of what this guy can do. This little dipsy-do twirlski, right? He is a really talented player. He is a very gifted player. He's got incredible handles. He's a guy who absolutely would be a very good playmaker for the Philadelphia Flyers. The question is whether or not he's going to end up coming over here. Now, I will also note that, like, if you start to do a deeper dive on Shabanov, like this one, he kind of plays it off his own skate, which is also absurd. By the way, like on a breakaway, he has the presence of mind and slows the game down enough where he plays it. You see it. He plays it off his own skate, kicks it back to himself, and then goes 5-hole. This guy would be electric in Philadelphia. And assuming that he's able to translate his game into the NHL, which is a more physical league, which has less space, which is a more competitive league and overall a better league, the best hockey league in the world, if he's able to translate that game to the U.S. and the Flyers can get him as a UFA, that could be as impactful of a signing as anything in this world because, you know, he might not have 40-goal upside, but can he net you 20, 25 goals? Can he, I don't know, can he play second-line minutes? Can he play third-line minutes? Can he provide you a boost on the power play? Maybe he's not on the top power play unit. Could he be a guy who's a playmaker on the second power play unit? I would say it's very likely. Now, in fairness, Shabanov has, you know, an interesting choice. Right now he plays for his hometown team. He's 24 years old. He could choose to re-up and remain in the KHL, or he can choose to take his talents to the NHL. And as I said before, it had been reported there were as many as, I think, 7 teams a couple of months ago that were kind of keeping tabs on him. And Anthony's reporting over at On Pattison is that there is a growing belief that he may have things whittled down to 2 teams, that he might have 2 teams that he'd be the most interested in playing for in the NHL, and that would be the Philadelphia Flyers and the Vegas Golden Knights. Well, we know that the Golden Knights are a damn good team. They are year in and year out a legitimate threat to win the Stanley Cup. We know that this is consistent. We get it, right? The Flyers are not that. However, the Flyers have done a very good job of late getting KHL players to the NHL, most notably Matvei Michkov, and along with him came Ivan Fedotov, who, if you just kind of take it back a little bit, Fedotov is very highly thought of in this organization, and had to go do the military service, and he was playing the KHL for a year, but they managed to get him over here. Alexei Kolosov, it didn't work out, but they did manage to also bring him over. It stands to reason that the Flyers are going to look to bring in a couple more Russian players at some point between this year and next year. Again, big part of that is likely trying to kind of make Matvei Michkov feel a little bit more comfortable as he's learning English, to also have a couple people who maybe speak the same language. Igor Zamula may be on the team next year, maybe the 7th defenseman, may not be on this team next year, who knows. Also worth noting that Shabanov was a teammate of Igor Zamula on like a U16 team in Russia. I don't think that that's going to be the thing that's ultimately going to help him decide on the Flyers over the Golden Knights. But I do think it's a very interesting point. And I do think that ultimately it's a very good thing for the Flyers that they are at least looking outside of just the UFA and RFA market in the NHL. I have no problem whatsoever with them looking abroad and trying to bring in some of the best players. Once again, friends, like, this guy is he's a finalist. He's one of the 3 finalists for the KHL MVP award, the Golden Stick. Call the KHL what you want. Being able to convince a guy who he might end up winning the award, but a guy who's a finalist for that award in what I would say is probably the 2nd best league in the world, you could certainly do worse. So if the Flyers can get Shabanov over, I have no idea what a contract looks like. I can't imagine that it's an $8 million deal. Is it 4? Is it 4.5? Is it 5? Is it a short-term deal? Is it a long-term deal? I don't know. But if you're weighing that versus Mitch Marner, it gets a little bit interesting, right? Because you're playing wing for wing. You're comparing wing for wing. So let's go there really quickly, because that's the big thing that people have gotten themselves very worked up about over the last few days. And, we talked about it on this show. And, I'm not saying that we lead the discussion here on the Russ Joy Show, but I will note that sometimes we have conversations on this show. And then within, the next 6 hours to 24 hours, some other people pick up with it and they start to put out their own clips and they start to put out their own shows and stuff. And then they try to build some discussion. I don't fault them. I don't fault them at all. Now, I will note, the Mitch Marner thing is really interesting because I kind of floated the idea like, all right, if you're the Flyers, if this is a guy who 4 out of the last 5 years has flirted with the 100-point mark, could you theoretically sign him to like a $10 million a year deal over 7 years? Does that get it done? Do you feel good about it? Does he feel good about it? Probably not. Some of the national pundits are talking about $13 million a year for Mitch Marner, which a 100-point player he may be, but $13 million for Mitch Marner is fucking insanity. And if a team signs him to $13 million plus per season for 7 years, that is lunacy. He's a very good player. And in fairness, you don't get a lot of 100-point players hitting unrestricted free agency, but $13 million a year for 7+ years for Mitch Marner, I would not say is a great investment. Now, all of that said, if Danny Briere really wanted to get creative, is there a path to trading away an Owen Tippett or trading away a Travis Konechny before the no movement clause kicks in? I really don't think he's going to do Konechny dirty. I just don't see a scenario where Briere says, you know what? I know that I'm the one who signed the deal, but thinking that it's probably a mistake, we're just going to offload Travis Konechny to somebody else before the no movement clause kicks in. I don't think Briere is going to do that. And I do think that even though there's been this coaching change, and even though Tockett's not the one who put the A on Konechny's sweater, I think they view him as a really important key cog of this team. And in fairness, he's now represented Team Canada in multiple international competitions, and he's played pretty well. And, I know that it's not, the ideal scenario. I know it's not, the Olympics or whatever. But, there is something to be said for being on that international stage representing Team Canada. And when you start to think about, potentially trying to recruit players or get players to at least be open to the idea of considering a meeting with the Flyers, having those kind of guys helps. If you blindside Konechny and trade him before the no movement clause kicks in, you're doing a lot of damage to your reputation as an organization and as a front office. So I don't think he'll be dealt. Could Tippett get moved? That's where I think things get more interesting. The problem is the contract. The contract is fucking atrocious. When the Flyers signed Tippett to the deal that they did, I thought it was an overpay. And you have to remember, they signed Konechny to a really big deal that I said, just based on his size and the years that he already has on him, and, I look at myself in the mirror, and size-wise, we're similar. Konechny, obviously, in much better shape than little old me, but, I do think that there is a stature thing when you talk about, long-term and the kind of minutes you need to play and the kind of situations that you need to play in, where I went, I like Konechny a lot. But I was like, it seems like a lot of money and a lot of years. But the Tippett deal to me was the ultimate overpay. It was the ultimate, you're really hoping that this guy is going to blossom into a 40-plus goal scorer. And I wasn't sold on it then. And after a very up and down season, I'm still not sold on it. Now, again, Tippett could end up becoming some legit elite goal scorer. He's got incredible speed. It's just that he goes through long stretches where he can't hit the broadside of a barn. It makes me legitimately worried about his overall upside as a player. But if Marner becomes available, and let's say the free agent market doesn't work out the way that he wants it to. Let's say Marner's asking for $13.5 million a year. And teams are just absolutely not. There's no way. And the Flyers are looking at some cap space. There's a team that's interested in Tippett. Could they look to get out from under the Tippett money to free up enough to go out and get Marner? And do they sign him for $11.5, $12 million? Do they sell themselves on the idea that signing a Marner to that kind of money isn't as bad because the cap is going to continue to go up? And when you look at the percentage, the overall percentage that one contract has relative to the rest of the cap, is it good business? There's a case to be made that maybe. But based on the numbers that we see right now, and based on the numbers that we saw a Sam Reinhart take, which again was an undervalued contract because there's no tax in Florida, I don't know, do you really want to set the market? Do you really want to kind of set the new bar? And is Mitch Marner that elite of a player that you want to pay him 12.5, 13 million? I'm not so sure. I don't think it would be the greatest investment, but he would represent an automatic upgrade. Like, that's the thing that people, I do think, kind of miss out on and kind of screw up when they're analyzing Marner to the Flyers. Would he become a better option than Konechny? Yeah, he's a better player than Konechny. No offense to Konechny. Or at least he's a better point producer than Konechny. Now, in fairness, Konechny has not had the supporting cast that Marner's had. So you can say, like, I don't know, if you put Konechny on those Leafs teams, would he have been a 90-point guy? Would he have been a 92, 95, maybe even a 100-point upside guy? I don't think he would. I don't really think that's his game. But I don't know. Would he represent an immediate upgrade over an Owen Tippett? Of course. Would he be an immediate upgrade over Tyson Forster? Of course. Although I think that there might be a little bit more to Forster than I thought initially. I think that there's something there with that kid. And so I'd be a little bit more hesitant to move him. The Tippett contract to me is the one that if you're going to try to go after a free agent this offseason, that's the one you have to try to figure out how to move. So I don't know. But that was Marner. But he's not even the one that I'm the most worried about. But before we get to the one that I'm most worried about, I'm going to go over to the comments here because obviously people are very, very locked in on the situation right now. And they have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to put the comments back down here in the corner for a bit for people to do. But JH says, you've heard of cap hell, but what about second cap hell? Yeah, we don't need cap hell. Mike Swithers says, we just got out of cap hell. No on Marner. In fairness, like Jonesy went on WIP yesterday, 2 days ago. Jonesy went on WIP and was talking about the fact that the Flyers will have significantly more cap space in 2026. Listen, I don't think it's a secret. Teams want to keep cap space open for 2026. Why? Because Connor McDavid's going to hit the market. And yes, we can all laugh about the idea that Connor McDavid is going to leave Edmonton for Philadelphia. All right, we can all laugh at it. But if you're the Flyers, you would be doing yourself a massive disservice, and it would be organizational malpractice to not at least give yourself the flexibility that if divine intervention were to happen and the best player in the world decides that he wants to sign with your team for whatever reason, uproot his life, come all the way across, move out of Canada to the U.S., move to the East Coast, play in one of the under the brightest lights in Philadelphia in one of the toughest media markets, one of the toughest fan bases. If he wanted to do that, you do want to keep that space. Now, in fairness, if he likes wearing orange, the Flyers wear orange. And he's not going to go to Anaheim, so the Flyers. Makes sense. Let's see. Joe Papel says, cap room is precious and we need a 1C, 1D, and 1G. I don't disagree with any of that. But you do have to make the team better at some point. Let's see. Swithers also says Shabanov played 65 games, had 23 goals, 44 assists for 67 points in the regular season. And in the playoffs, he had 21 games and 20 points. He's been around a point per game guy all year, which is nice. Let's see. Amadeus says Tippett or York to Buffalo to get back into the top 10. I don't think that'll happen. The York thing, I've told you guys where I'm at there. Like, I would not re-sign Cam York. I would not bridge deal Cam York. I would not go long-term deal at a lower AAV for Cam York. No. I don't see it. I will never see it. And at some point, he can make me look like a total dipshit. But I really just do not believe in the upside of Cam York. That's a guy who, if you can trade him for something valuable, or you can throw him into a package to maybe get yourself back up into the first round a little bit higher, maybe package him with the Colorado pick and get up to like number 14 or 15 if a guy's falling, Roger McQueen. If there's a guy who's falling to you that maybe has, 1C upside, Roger McQueen, who maybe has like a little bit of an injury history, and certainly it's a troubling one with a back, I don't know if there's anybody who fits that bill, Roger McQueen. Like, I would do that because that to me is like a very smart play. You're trading away a guy that I don't think really has a long-term future here in York. You're trading the 22nd overall pick, and you're potentially trying to take a swing on somebody who could maybe be that 1C at a very affordable price. Maybe. Joe Papel also says, Marner disappeared for multiple seasons in big playoff games. He's going to Colorado. Never, Marner. Russ. Well, Joe, I don't know if he's going to go to Colorado. He's not staying in Toronto. It would be shocking if he did. I think they've long been ready to part. It's also part of why it's so surprising that Toronto didn't move him before the deadline. Now, there was the rumor out there that he did not want to go to Carolina. And then when Rantanen was available, when Rantanen was being floated, I don't know if it was when he was with Colorado and Marner didn't want to go to Colorado, or was it that Marner didn't want to go to Carolina after Rantanen was dealt from Colorado to Carolina, but before he was dealt to Dallas? Anyway. Ryan Reese says, Konechny is more important to the Flyers than signing Marner would be. It all depends. But I think like from the soul of the team, I do think that you're right. Mike Swither says, you do not trade TK. Vineet Singh says Matt Coronado got $6.5 million per year. Joe says in 1 year, McDavid is a UFA. If he doesn't extend, offer McDavid $20 million per year. I mean, they'll offer him the most money they possibly can. DeGrazio says TK's exit interview was questionable, though. Rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't see it. Listen, anybody who's been on this team as long as Konechny has and has had so many lost seasons where they haven't even been in contention or real contention, I can understand if they're not thrilled. He also notes the issue with talking about wingers is that the team has no stability down the center of the ice, makes judging recent winger play very difficult. That's why I've been like very much on the John Tavares bandwagon, 2-3 year deal. I don't mind burning some cap space for a guy that I think could get a lot out of Mishkov, could maybe get a lot out of Shabanov if he ends up coming here. I don't know. We'll see. Vineet Singh says, is Marner at $13 million better than TK at $8.75 million? I'm not sure. I mean, he's a 100-point player. Is that worth the extra 4.25? Maybe. But then again, it also depends on whether or not you think Marner can get to that same kind of productivity here. He needs a center for it to work. Like, you can't sign Mitch Marner and put him on a line with Sean Couturier, expecting Couturier to be like 3 or 4 years ago Couturier, because he's not that guy. Wonderful guy, and he's been trying to fight through, multiple back surgeries, but like, he's not that same guy. Let's see. Mike says, I'm sorry, there's no scenario I like that convinces me to bring in Marner. I stand by what I said. Tavares for 2 years at $8 million per, veteran leadership, and he's still performing. I agree there. Let's see. Nick Johnson says, Tavares didn't have a point in the last 5 games for the Leafs in the playoffs. I don't care. I know this is going to rub people the wrong way. I honestly don't care about the playoff production. Like, if you bring in John Tavares for a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, it is to try to get the most out of Matvei Mishkov. It is not about John Tavares being a 30-goal scorer for this team or about like him carrying the team through the playoffs. It is about putting a competent center next to Mishkov, can that get that guy to another level? And can it develop Mishkov to a point where, whether it's through the draft or through free agency, you are able to get that legit 1C at some point in the next 2 years, and then all of a sudden Mishkov is ready, that he doesn't have his growth stifled by being stuck with like, a middle 6 guy playing, 1C minutes. Amadeo says, Jonesy and Danny want to make their impact on Philly. They want their version of Bryce Harper or Eric Lindros to Philly. Yeah, I mean, McDavid would be that. Marner would not have that same impact, not even close. Jacob over on YouTube. I don't recognize his name. Jacob, thanks for finding the show. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. Says Kaprizov would be a nice add next year. He would be. Next year's free agent class is just better. And Amadeo has it here. McDavid, Eichel, and Kaprizov are all free agents in 2026. It is a better UFA class, undoubtedly. Will Eichel leave the Knights? I'm not so sure. Listen, beyond the fact that Vegas is a perennial contender, they were also willing to move heaven and earth to get him out of Buffalo when he was arguing with Buffalo about the neck surgery. And Vegas was willing to still commit to him and kind of go with what he wanted to do medically. And I think that there's like something about that probably gives them an added advantage. I don't know if McDavid's going to leave. If I were him, got bounced again. He's probably not going to win the cup next year. If they're a flame out again, maybe he thinks about it. But like, I would love to get into McDavid's head. Like, would he consider playing in the U.S.? Like, would he consider moving out of Canada? Would he consider moving across the country? I don't know. I just don't think we know enough about McDavid, and it's because he plays in Edmonton. He's across the country, and he's north of the border. I just don't think we know enough about him, Like, about what makes him tick. I don't mean like we don't know enough about him as a player. We obviously know Connor McDavid's the best player, or you put him up there with Nathan McKinnon. If you want to say McKinnon is the best player, I guess you can make that case. But he's one of the best players in the world. We know what he is on the ice. We just don't really know what makes him tick. Tony Louis says, I'd be more interested in upgrading our defense through free agency Theodore and Ekblad would be great additions and also help our goalies. Yeah, I mean, listen, if you put a better team in front of your goalies, your goalies are probably going to perform better. And I will note, I know that this is like kind of shocking. Sam Ersson's had a really good time playing for Sweden. It's a better overall team relative to the competition than what the Flyers had in front of him. Oh, and by the way, he's had a little bit of time to decompress after a long season. And oh, by the way, he's playing a role that was expected of him for Sweden. I don't know if Ersson's ever going to be a number one guy. He strikes me now as being a legitimate, very good backup goalie who can be your starter in a pinch if your main guy gets hurt for a bit and has to go on IL. But that's it. Anthony says, you cannot have all of Drysdale, York, and Emil Andre. I agree. I mean, it's too small of a defensive group. I mean, Brad Shaw, who's since departed for New Jersey, said on the Press Row show at the Flyers Carnival, too many small defensemen. You need to add size at the blue line. They don't have it right now. Let's see. He also says Marner is a point-per-game guy, almost a point-per-game guy in the playoffs. Narrative of him disappearing is nonsense. I think I talked about that on Wednesday's show. Maybe it was Monday's show. Like, for his career, he's virtually a point-per-game guy in the playoffs. He might not perform the way that you want him to in the games where his team gets eliminated, but in fairness, like, nobody on Toronto performed. We're talking about the fact that, like, in an elimination game, in a Game 7, Scott Lawton was the best Maple Leaf. All right? How much of that do you put on Marner? I'm sure you could put a lot on him. But, like, you had guys like Austin Matthews that also kind of no-showed that game and then accused everybody else of being a passenger. So, I don't know. Make of that what you will. Now, Sutliff says, why would Tavares want to sign here instead of a cup-contending team? I don't know. Because there's this belief, and Joe says this, like, that he's going to stay in Toronto. He always wanted to play for Toronto, and maybe he'll, like, keep riding it out there, and they'll continue to be in the mix. I don't think that they're going to win a cup with that core, and Marner's going to leave, and I don't know how much better they're going to be without Marner. So I just don't know. I'm not saying that he would sign here. I'm saying if you're the Flyers, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying that it makes sense for Tavares to come here. KW1323 says if Tavares leaves Toronto, he's going to go to a team that he thinks has a great chance to win a cup right away. It's possible. Maybe even likely. Joe Papel says McDavid would come east to avoid the horrible West Conference travel. I don't know. Again, we don't know. Amadeo says he flew on the Philly to Philly on the Flyers plane from Four Nations, nudge, and slipped a 20 into his pocket. That is not confirmed. Let's see. Vineet says McDavid was asked what he likes about living in Edmonton, and his answer was the days are long. Other than the close connection to Draisaitl, I think he goes to UFA if they don't win next year. I will point out, there was a name that was thrown over here in the comments. Vineet Singh says, I would offer Sam Bennett 8x5. I assume that's $8 million a year for 5 years. Not knowing, well, and so you have that, and then earlier in the show, Amadeo threw out this idea, Sam Bennett is not worth $10 million, not even close. We had a bunch of people in the comments talking about Sam Bennett earlier. So that's actually the last guy that I want to get to. And then we're going to go over to the Sixers point to close out the show. The Sam Bennett thing is really interesting. And I think where Amadeo got the $10 million thing is there was a report floating out there about Sam Bennett. And obviously, he is a very important piece to Florida. And Florida's up 2-0 on Carolina. And wouldn't it be hilarious if Carolina gets bounced and fires Brind'Amour, and the Flyers could have theoretically gone after Brind'Amour, and they have Tocchet under contract? I mean, you weren't going to wait that long, and they really wanted to get Tocchet, and I don't know. If Brind'Amour had been available, heads up, like, would they have gone for Rod the Bod over Tocchet? I have no idea. But there was an idea floated out there that Sam Bennett might get $10 million plus per year. And when you think about, like, what a good signing or a bad signing would be, to me, there is no reason whatsoever, under any circumstances, to pay Sam Bennett $10 million a year. And there was, and I can't find the reporter now, and I feel bad because I want to give credit. There was a reporter who heard that there's at least one team that might consider $10 million a year for Sam Bennett. And I just don't get it. I broke down his numbers the other day. He is a very good center for what his role is with Florida. But, like, his career high for points, I think, is 51 points in a season. So I don't know why you would think that if he's playing for Florida and he was only able to put up a career high 51 points on a loaded Florida team, why he would come to Philadelphia and all of a sudden become like an 80 or 90 point guy. And if you want to spend $10 million on a guy to come in and be a 50-point guy, that to me is almost even more troubling and even more concerning. Again, very good player, has a very defined role with Florida, has been part of a very successful team in Florida. But like when I think about like raising the ceiling of this team or even raising the floor of this team, where instead of being a lottery team, your floor, your worst case scenario is being a bubble team, and your best case scenario is being a playoff team and maybe having a chance to win a first round series. I don't think he like does it. I don't think he gets there. So him making $10 million seems insane to me. Now, if you're the Flyers, do you offer him $8 million? Let's go to Vinny's idea. $8 million over 5 years. If he's a 51-point guy, probably don't feel great about it. Now, if you're looking for a guy who's going to give you some grit, give you some strong play, could kind of be a stopgap center, maybe a stopgap 1C for a year or two. I don't think he's really a 1C, but could you try to sell yourself? I just worry that you're kind of getting into the Kevin Hayes of it all. Now, I think Bennett and Kevin Hayes are obviously very different players, but trying to play a 2C as a 1C and expecting him to give you 1C production, to me, is not a very good idea. I wouldn't be opposed to them going after the guy. I think that he's a very good player, but I just don't get it. Like, I don't see what a lot of people see. I don't see the idea of, like, why you would move heaven and earth and why you would, potentially drop 8 figures on a guy every year to bring him to this team. Would he make them better? Would he make the Flyers a better team? Sure. Would he fundamentally change the franchise? No. I don't think he would. Let's see what the people are saying over in the comments, because I see there's a whole bunch over in the comments. Let's see. Joe Papel says, no Bennett. Tony Louis says, Sam Bennett is this generation's Claude Lemieux. Underwhelming regular season, but a dog in the playoffs. So there's your inverse, I guess, of Tavares, right? Maybe you sign Tavares and Bennett. You just kind of flip-flop. One's going to perform in the regular season, one performs in the playoffs. Maybe. Mike Swithers says, can't stop laughing on someone saying $10 million for Bennett. That is hilarious. Oh, there we go. Video guy Amadeo. Delivering. I was wondering who was DMing me on Twitter during the show. No, this wasn't it. But Jay Onray from TSN is one who threw it out there. Marty Buron, I think, was the one who kind of put it out there. $10 million is a lot. A lot. Vinit says $10 million is crazy, but we all have to realize the cap will be $120 million in 4 years. Second line center won't make $8 million. I don't like the idea, though, of kind of like earmarking and banking and like giving a guy a lot more than he's worth right now just based on the idea that the cap is going to go up. I understand it if it's a player, like in the case of a Marner, like I said before, if you look at it and you say percentage of cap-wise, it's not going to hurt you as much in 3 years, and you're getting a guy who's maybe a 100-point player, all right, fine. Bennett, though, is maybe like a $7.5 million a year guy. He's not a $10 million a year guy. And having to sell yourself on the idea that like, in 3 years, 4 years, that $10 million isn't going to hurt as much. What about the 3 years that lead up to it? That's where I'm at. Tony Louis says Steve Dangle wants Toronto to give Bennett $9 million per year. And if that happens, I assume that means Tavares would not be back. So Anthony DeGrazio says Claude Giroux would be a good stopgap move. I'm going to ban. Hold on, let me see. I need to ban Anthony DeGrazio from the Oh, he says I'm kidding. All right, no ban coming. No ban. You cannot do that. I went into a rant. I pissed off a lot of people on TikTok and Instagram. Short form content, thanks to video guy Amadeo. Pissed off a lot of Giroux fans a few weeks ago when I said it would be a catastrophic mistake to bring Giroux back. You don't need to go backwards and bring in somebody who was here during one of the worst or most forgettable runs in Flyers history, and I get it. The front offices didn't exactly give him a lot to work with, but I would not bring the guy back. Could he maybe help you? Maybe. I just don't think he's certainly not the player that he once was. So, make of that what you will. I don't know if anybody threw out the idea of a 1 or 2 year deal, but Joe Papel says Bennett will not take a 1 or 2 year deal, of course. Let's see. JH says, I love Giroux, one of my all-time Flyers, but you can't bring him back now. I agree. Okay. I think that was it for the Flyer stuff. I think that was it for potential targets. So we talked about Marner, we talked about Bennett, we talked about Shabanov. We'll see. If nothing else, it's interesting to me that like there are still so many people that are this passionate about who the Flyers could go after in the offseason. Like, there have been a lot of apathetic years. I do think it kind of speaks to like the fact that people realize things are going to get better. They have at least some belief in this front office. And they certainly have a lot of belief in Matvei Michkov and his ability to become a superstar. There are people who are still interested in this team, even though they haven't exactly done a whole lot to give you that faith. I do think that things are kind of pointing in the right direction. And so we will see. All right. Joe Papel says, spending your finally freed up cap for these stopgap measures would be a Fletcher Mort move. Just say no. I think you're probably right. Amadeo asks, real question, did Chuck Fletcher have a cap calculator app to go along with the trade value app? I don't know. I don't know if he did. I don't know. All right, last thing before we roll out of here. It's a Sixers thing. I know. Did you know that there's a basketball team in this city? Did you know about that? Because apparently there is. I don't remember them, but apparently there is a basketball team in this town. So there was this rumor thrown out there that the Sixers might look to move the number 3 overall pick along with a guy like Paul George to potentially go after a guy like Kevin Durant or Lauri Markkanen, pull him out of Utah, pull Kevin Durant out of Phoenix. And so Jeremy Woo was the one who brought this up, works over at ESPN. Jeremy Woo, not related, at least to my knowledge, to Shelby Woo, of course, made famous by the show, The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo. We'll see how many people in the comments understood that reference. I'm assuming it's going to be more than I expected. But anyway, we'll throw over to the quote from Jeremy Woo about a Paul George for Kevin Durant deal. This was earlier this week, and it's been since kind of shot down as being legit or valid. But Jeremy Woo reported some teams expect the Sixers to be active in trade conversations with names such as Kevin Durant and packages that could include Paul George and the number 3 pick. And so that got me wondering, would that do anything for you if you are a Sixers fan? Like, take a lot of the other stuff out of it, right? There's obviously a lot of discourse about like if Ace Bailey is going to be a really good NBA player. Could he be an impact player right away? Could he develop into an impact player 2-3 years down the line? Should the Sixers start to look to build that next core, knowing that Paul George has a lot of injuries, bad injury history, Joel Embiid obviously bad injury history. Should they look to just draft Ace Bailey, have a guy who can stretch the floor, have a guy that can maybe develop into an elite scorer, have him to go with Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, some other young up-and-coming guys? Do you just kind of build the team around them and take any positive contributions you can get from Paul George and Joel Embiid in the upcoming season and see where that team takes you? That's what I would do. I would. But if you aren't sold on the idea of Ace Bailey, and you're not sold on the idea of anybody, and you just say, you know what? That number 3 pick, we don't think is really that valuable. It's great that we got it, but now we're going to use it as a bargaining chip. And you could get out from under the Paul George contract, and you could bring in a Lauri Markkanen. I don't think that's worth it. Lauri Markkanen is a much better player than anybody thought he was going to be, but like that doesn't move the needle for me. Does Kevin Durant move the needle? I mean, it would certainly get people talking, but Kevin Durant hasn't exactly been a wild success in Phoenix, or at least building the team around Kevin Durant being brought in, Bradley Beal, horrible. Bradley Beal being brought in, and of course, building around Devin Booker. That trio, that big 3 has not worked out. All of that in mind, Durant hasn't exactly slowed down. Durant still averaged almost 27 points per game this year. He's 36 years old. He'll be 37 by the time the next season begins. Does he do enough for you to make you think about trading that number 3 overall pick? To me, it all just kind of comes down to what do you value window-wise? Daryl Morey certainly would consider it. Why? Because Daryl Morey wants to save his job. That's the most important thing for Daryl Morey. It probably in fairness, it probably should be the thing that he cares the most about. But like Daryl Morey wanting to save his job, do you have a better chance of winning games with Kevin Durant than Paul George? The answer is yes. Do you have a better chance of Kevin Durant playing more games than Paul George each and every season? Probably. I mean, it's also worth noting that, like, there were some years in Brooklyn, Durant was hurt. It didn't work out. I mean, since the Achilles tear, he's only really had one season where he's gone 70 games or more. It was like 2 years ago with Phoenix. There have been a bunch of seasons where he hasn't played nearly as much. He played 62 games last year. The production is still really high. He's still a very good player. Could a Tyrese Maxey, Kevin Durant, Jared McCain, Joel Embiid lineup and plug in whoever you want as a Kelly Oubre, who is it? Could that team be a contender in the Eastern Conference? The answer is yes, because the Eastern Conference is kind of a mess. Giannis might end up leaving Milwaukee, might end up forcing his way out. Two of the teams that make the most sense are like Houston and San Antonio. And if that happens, Milwaukee's going to be a worse team. You know that the Knicks are going to remain in the mix here for the next few years. You know that Boston is going to remain sort of in the mix, although without Tatum, it does change the calculus on at least next season for them. And Achilles tears are weird, man. Like, there's no guarantee Tatum gets back to the player that he was. Like, there's an opening here. In theory, there could be an opening if you're the Sixers. But if you want to go all in on this little window with Joel Embiid, then yeah, Durant's a really good pickup. And if it costs you the third pick, that sucks. And I'm not sure it's a great idea, but Durant does make you better. And I would certainly want to roll the dice more with Durant than I would Paul George. But Daryl Morey has come out and said they are going to build around Paul George and they're going to build around Joel Embiid. And the assumption here is that they're going to build around Tyrese Maxey, but who the hell knows? Now, if it were me, I'm fine with them keeping Paul George. I'm fine with them trying to believe in Joel Embiid again. But that number 3 pick to me should probably be used. And you should be able to kind of run 2 plans here. Develop the young guys. Hope that Paul George can be like a 20-point-per-game guy. Pull down 8-9 rebounds a night. Give you 4 assists or so. That Joel Embiid could come back and maybe he's not the number 1 option. Maybe Joel Embiid just becomes like a 20, 25-point-per-night kind of scorer. Can still pull down double-digit rebounds. Can still block a few shots. But isn't the focal point of the offense. Maybe you don't have one stone-cold killer. Maybe you don't have the guy that Jimmy Butler was in a very short run for this Sixers team. Maybe you don't have the James Harden that, took over a game against the Celtics in the playoffs when Embiid was out. Like, maybe you don't have that guy. And maybe it is like you don't know who's going to be the closer down the stretch. I'd like to see Tyrese Maxey develop into being that guy who has the ball in his hands at the end of the game and becomes the guy who wins you a bunch of games. That would be great. But, like, why would you pass up on the opportunity to have another window and, like, a very long potential window by using that number 3 overall pick and instead, like, packaging it just to get off the Paul George contract? Like, I don't know. Raymond Supper says, Jolly opened a can of whoop-ass on Spike and Daryl Morey as a sports talk classic. I heard some of what Jolovich said, and I almost never agree with the guy. But, like, he did a whole thing about how Daryl Morey's won nothing. And that's true. And, like, I'm sorry. Daryl Morey might have only ever had, like, 1 season as an executive where he missed the playoffs. Can I tell you a secret? Hold on. Let me see. Let me see. I can probably mess with the camera here. Can I do I used to be able to do the thing with the camera where I can, like, bring it in nice and tight. Let's see. The center state. Oh, there we go. Right here. Come here. Let's see. Can I I'll do a little zoom. Can I do a little zoom here? A little zoomage? Let's see if I get off of that. Here we go. Let's just, here we go. Focus in on the 7 head. All right, there we go. Yeah, now, there we go. Here's my little secret. I don't give a shit that Daryl Morey's only ever missed the playoffs 1 time as an executive. You know why? Daryl Morey's never gotten close to sniffing the NBA Finals. Daryl Morey's never had a team make the NBA Finals. Daryl Morey's never had a team win the NBA Finals. I don't know if you know this or not, but in order for you to hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy, you have to win the NBA Finals. But in order to win the NBA Finals, you have to get to the NBA Finals. I don't care If Daryl Morey's had a bunch of games, I don't care if Daryl Morey's had a bunch of games where it's like, oh, this is great. It was another great season. Oh, it was another great James Harden year. I don't care. I genuinely don't care. I could not give less of a shit about Daryl Morey's career accomplishments. I do not care. What I care about as a normal, somewhat well-adjusted individual is I care about whether or not this guy is going to be capable of getting this team to an NBA Finals. And if he can't, guess what? He's dead to me. I don't care. I don't need his CV on my desk. I don't care. Get to the finals. Win a finals. Otherwise, I don't care about your success. Once upon a time, Andy Reid was a really successful coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. They didn't win a Super Bowl. And eventually his message wore out its welcome, and he moved on, and he found a generational quarterback, an all-time great in Patrick Mahomes, and he won multiple Super Bowls, and it was great. And the Eagles moved on, and eventually Dougie P came in, won a Super Bowl, then it kind of didn't work out. Sirianni came in, won a Super Bowl, great. Sometimes you just have to move on. I don't think Daryl Morey is capable of building an NBA Finals team. I don't think he can build a team that wins. Tyrese Halliburton. I don't know if you've seen Tyrese Halliburton play basketball. Pretty good player. And multiple reports were that Sacramento was willing to give up Tyrese Halliburton for Ben Simmons. And Daryl Morey wanted his boy. He wanted his man candy, his guy that he had kind of hitched his wagon to for a long time in James Harden. And then it sounds like James Harden feels like got stabbed in the back by Daryl Morey. It didn't get that Supermax offer. And then you had to deal a distressed asset in James Harden. I just don't think Morey has it in him. And listen, he's a smart guy. And he's built teams that can make the playoffs. But they don't get it done. He hasn't built a winner. He hasn't built a winner. Not a winning team, a winner, a championship winner. And until you do that, I don't want to hear about your career accomplishments and his fucking just tone-deaf quote a few weeks ago. I'm pretty good at this winning thing. Says the guy who's never led a team to the NBA Finals. And on that, it's been a fantastic Friday. We had a lot of fun here today. Jeffrey Lurie and his wet dream. Jason Kelsey reacting. We had the Flyers topic. The Flyers, potential targets this offseason. And, of course, the thought that the Sixers might try to trade Paul George and the number 3 pick for Kevin Durant. Or somebody else. Who knows? Who's to say? One thing that we do know is that the next month is going to be really interesting. Flyers have a draft coming up. Sixers have a draft coming up. And what we have coming up this weekend is a nice, long weekend, my friends. Enjoy this weekend if you can. Take a moment on Monday to remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice or made the ultimate sacrifice defending this country. On Memorial Day, take at least a minute or two. If you see somebody walking around and they got the hat on, right? They've got one of their veteran hats on. You thank them for their service. You see somebody walking around in their fatigues. You thank them for their service. And in the meantime, you go enjoy pool parties, you enjoy your cookouts, enjoy all that stuff. But don't forget why we celebrate Memorial Day. That's that. On Monday, I will be back. I don't know when. I don't know if the 8:30 thing's ever going to happen again. I'm enjoying doing the show in the afternoon. So we might stick with some kind of an afternoon show, just kind of floating. I don't know. You guys can let me know in the comments. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. Liking the video is seriously important. And if you can, go leave a comment in the regular comment section when the stream is over. If you listen to the podcast feed, you can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. On Spotify, click on the show. You can leave a 5-star rating. If you're over on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a 5-star rating, but also a review. If you leave a 5-star review, I'll read it here on the show. I promise I will. So until Monday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Talk to all of you on a marvelous Monday. I think I'm going to do a Memorial Day show. Am I going to do a Memorial Day show? I don't know. I'll keep you posted. Probably, though. Probably going to do a Memorial Day show. Good chance. Maybe. Probably not. Well, maybe. Maybe. If not, it'll be a terrific Tuesday. Probably Monday, though. I don't know. I'm now talking myself out of it. And you can just stay posted over on the social media. So until the next show, this has been the Russ Joy Show. I've been Russ Joy. You knew that. You're smart. Name of the show. You got it. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to all of you very, very soon. Bye now.